Chapter 10 Friendship. My room was at the top of the house. I was well looked after by Mrs. Crubb, the landlady, and after 2 days and nights I felt as if I had lived there for a year. Steerforth hadn't turned up as we had arranged, so I walked to Highgate and saw Mrs. Steerforth. She told me that her son had gone away with one of his Oxford friends and was due to return the following day. A few days later, I was having my coffee and roll in the morning before going to the office, when Steerforth walked in. "Steerforth!" I cried. "I was beginning to think I would never see you again." We agreed that he and 2 friends would join me for dinner that evening. They arrived promptly at 6 o'clock, and I asked Steerforth to be in charge over the table. As I was inexperienced in such matters, Mrs. Crubb had hired a young man to serve the meal. After dinner, we went to the theatre. Due to the large amount of wine I had drunk, I behaved badly, especially when I saw Agnes. I called to her during the performance and was told to be quiet by everyone around me. Agnes was very embarrassed and asked my friends to take me home. I awoke with a very bad headache and a feeling of shame and sadness. As I was leaving for work in this sad state, I received a note from Agnes asking me to go and see her. I went at once and apologized for my behavior the night before. "It's over, Trotwood," she said. "Forget about it. I feel I must warn you, though. You have made a dangerous friend." "Do you mean Steerforth?" I asked. "You are wrong. We have been friends since I was at Salem House School." We talked for a while, but I could see that she didn't agree with me. So we left that subject and spoke of other things. Then out of the blue, she asked me if I had seen Uriah. "Uriah Heep?" I asked. "No, is he in London?" She said that he was, and that he was going into partnership with her father. "What Uriah? That man isn't fit for such a promotion," I cried. "Have you spoken to your father about this, Agnes? You must stop your father from taking this crazy step while there is still time." Agnes reminded me of our previous conversation about her father and said that Uriah had made himself indispensable. Agnes then said that she thought her father was afraid of Uriah Heep. Uriah professes humility and gratitude, but his position is one of power. He said that he was going away because he had found a job with better prospects. My father was very upset by this news and offered him a partnership. I had never seen Agnes cry before, and she begged me to be kind to Uriah Heep for her father's sake. The weeks passed and my training was complete. I was then articled at Spenlow and Jorkins at a salary of £90 a year. I looked forward to my future as a lawyer. Mr. Spenlow invited me to spend a weekend at his house in Norwood with him and his daughter. She had just finished her education in Paris and had returned to England. There was a lovely garden at Mr. Spenlow's house with a charming lawn and a cluster of trees. We went into that cheerfully lit house. "Where is Miss Dora?" said Mr. Spenlow to the servant. "Dora?" I thought. "What a beautiful name!" We turned into a room and there was Dora and her companion. Mr. Spenlow introduced us, but I didn't really hear anything he said, as I had fallen in love with Dora after just one look. "I know, Mr. Copperfield," said a voice. It wasn't Dora speaking, but her companion, Miss Murdstone. I was astonished and heard myself saying, "How do you do, Miss Murdstone? I hope you are well. And how is Mr. Murdstone?" Miss Murdstone replied that both she and her brother were well. Mr. Spenlow was surprised to see that we knew each other and said, "Unhappily, my daughter Dora has no mother, and Miss Murdstone has been kind enough to become Dora's companion. I listened to Dora's delightful little voice and her gay little laugh. Later that evening, Miss Murdstone stopped me and spoke to me about the past. She tried to excuse herself for the way she and her brother had treated me, but I turned to her and said, "Miss Murdstone, you and Mr. Murdstone were cruel to me. You treated my mother very unkindly, and I will never forgive you for that. For as long as I live, I would prefer not to talk about the past again." Miss Murdstone nodded her agreement. The following morning I was out walking when I turned the corner and came across Dora. "You are out early, Miss Penlow," I said. "Yes, I enjoy the early morning. I think it's the brightest time of the whole day. Miss Murdstone thinks that I should stay inside until later in the day, but I think that's just nonsense, don't you?" I nodded in agreement, too tongue-tied to speak. I stammered that it was a very bright morning. "I understand you have just come home from Paris," I mumbled. "Yes," she replied. "Have you been there?" I said that I hadn't, and before I could say anything else, Miss Murdstone found us and marched us into breakfast. Dora made the tea and I drank cup after cup just because she made it. She spent a quiet day walking together and dining with the family. In the evening we looked through books and pictures. Miss Murdstone guarded us and didn't let us out of her sight. If only Mr. Spenlow knew when he sat opposite me at the dinner table that I was already imagining myself as Dora's husband. Some days later I went to visit Traddles. He was delighted to see me and invited me into his little room on the first floor of the rather shabby house. Traddles told me that he too was training to be a lawyer and also that he was engaged to be married. He said that he couldn't afford to get married for a very long time, but his fiancée was happy to wait for him. She was a curate's daughter and lived down in Devonshire. He went on to tell me that he took most of his meals with a couple downstairs. They were called Mr. and Mrs. McCapper. "Traddles!" I exclaimed. "Mr. and Mrs. McCapper? Why, I know them very well. We are old friends." I begged Traddles to call his landlord upstairs. Mr. McCapper came rushing into the room and greeted me joyfully. As always, Mr. McCapper seemed hopeful about the future. He asked about Dr. Strong and everyone at Canterbury. Before I left, I invited Traddles together with Mr. and Mrs. McCapper to dinner with me the following evening. At this little dinner party, I served fish, a small leg of mutton, and a pigeon pie, all cooked after much persuasion by Mrs. Crupp. I really was afraid of the lady. I hoped that Mr. McCapper would mix together the punch, and that was his speciality. The three of them arrived on time and were delighted at my house. Mr. McCapper happily peeled lemons, added sugar, burnt rum, and boiled water to make a delicious punch. I can't say that the dinner party was a complete success. The fish was burnt and the meat undercooked, but the company was lively and fun to be with. We were in the middle of the meal when I turned and saw Latimer standing hat in hand before me. He asked if Steerforth was with us, and seemed surprised when I said that he wasn't. Latimer seemed upset. He sat down, and before we could ask any more questions, Steerforth himself appeared. He had just returned from Yarmouth and had a letter for me from Peggotty. I opened the letter and read that Peggotty's husband was very ill. I decided to go to Yarmouth and see my old nurse to comfort and support her in her time of trouble. I was very sorry that Mr. Barks was ill, as I liked him very much. As I was undressing for bed, A letter from Mr. Micawber tumbled to the floor. It was dated an hour and a half before dinner. Mr. Micawber was once again in crisis and behind with the rent. I didn't feel sorry for Mr. Micawber, but I did feel sorry for Traddles, as Mr. Micawber had sold Traddles' possessions as well as his own to pay off his debts. This would put back my friend's wedding. I wondered if the curate's daughter would wait forever. I arrived in Yarmouth in the evening and went to the inn, ate, and then went to visit Mr. Peabody. He opened the door at the first tap, and we shook hands and went into the kitchen. Emily was sitting by the fire with her hands in front of her face, and Ham was standing next to her. "Emily, my dear, here's Master Davy," cried Mr. Peabody. Emily trembled, and I remembered the coldness of her hand when I touched it. Peabody came down and hugged me and thanked me for coming. She led me upstairs to see her husband. "Barks, my dear," she said, bending over him, "here's my dear boy, Master Davy, who brought us together. Barks, won't you speak to Master Davy?" Peabody spoke to him again, and he opened his eyes. He tried to stretch out his arm, and said to me with a pleasant smile, "Barks is willing." Then he died. I stayed with Peabody until the funeral was over. She decided to return to London with me so that I could execute Mr. Barks's will. We looked for the will in the box he kept under the bed, but after quite a long search it was found at the bottom of the horse's nose bag, together with an old gold watch with chain and seals, 87 guineas and a half in guineas, and half guineas, 210 pounds in banknotes, receipts for Bank of England stock, and an old horseshoe. Altogether, Mr. Barks had been worth over 3,000 pounds. He left some money to Mr. Peabody, to Ham, to little Emily, and to myself, but most of it went to his widow. The night before Peabody and I left for London, Ham arrived wet and dripping on the doorstep in answer to Mr. Peabody's question of Emily's whereabouts. Ham made a motion with his head as if she were outside. Ham asked to speak to me outside. He looked pale, and I asked him what the matter was. "Master Davy," he cried as if his heart was broken. I was paralyzed by the sight of his grief, and asked him once again what the matter was. "My Emily, Master Davy, the girl who I loved and would have gladly died for, she is gone." "Gone?" I repeated. "Emily has run away. How can I tell my uncle, Master Davy? How can I break the news to him? This will destroy him." I saw the door move. It was too late. I shall never forget the look on Mr. Peabody's face when he saw us. We all stood in the kitchen. Ham handed me a letter from Emily, and I looked at it. Mr. Peabody looked at me and said, "Read it, sir, slowly, please, so that we can understand." I started reading it slowly. When you, who love me so much more than I deserve, read this. I shall be far away, and I am leaving my home, never to return unless he marries me and brings me back a lady. This letter will be found at night, many hours after I have left. Oh, I am sorry to do this to you, but I can't help myself. Tell my uncle that I love him very much, and that I never meant to hurt him. Ham, love some good girl instead of me, someone who will be true to you and worthy of you. My last tears and my last thanks are for my uncle." That was all it said. Mr. Peabody stood still long after I finished reading. Then he said in a low, quiet voice, "Who's the man? I want to know his name." Ham glanced at me, and suddenly I felt a shock as he told me to leave them for a while. Whilst he spoke to his uncle, I felt the shock again and sank down into a chair. For some time, began Ham, there has been a servant around here. This servant was seen with Emily last night. People thought he had left town, but he was hiding. A strange carriage was seen in Yarmouth. This morning the servant went to it and Emily went with him. The other man was inside. He is the man she has run away with. Don't tell me it was Steerforth, cried Mr. Peabody.